It was a quiet night. Too quiet. The hum of my engine was the only sound breaking the silence as I cruised down the dimly lit road. The streetlights flickered in the distance, casting long shadows over the empty asphalt. The kind of night where your instincts stay on edge, whispering that something just isn't right. Then, out of nowhere, flashing red and blue lights filled my rearview mirror. My heart skipped a beat. Not because I was speeding. I wasn't. Not because I had done anything wrong. I hadn't. But something about it felt off. I glanced at my speedometer. 35 and a 40. Nothing wrong there. My registration was up to date, and I wasn't swerving or driving erratically, so why was I being pulled over? I slowed down, signaling as I eased my car to the shoulder. The gravel crunched beneath my tires, and I took a steady breath, trying to shake off the growing unease creeping up my spine. I watched in the side mirror as the officers stepped out of their vehicle. 2 men, both in dark uniforms, no reflective patches, no department insignia. That was the first red flag. I clenched the steering wheel, my pulse quickening. This didn't feel like a normal traffic stop. Something was wrong, and I was about to find out just how bad it was. I kept my hands on the steering wheel, fingers tightening slightly as I watched them approach in my side mirror. Something wasn't right. The way they walked, too casual, too uncoordinated. Real officers move with confidence, with purpose. These guys, it was like they were playing dress-up in uniforms that didn't quite fit. And speaking of uniforms, no patches, no name tags, no department insignias, just plain black shirts and pants, like they bought them from some cheap surplus store. Red flag number 2. I took a slow breath, keeping my face neutral, as one of them stepped up to my window. He looked mid-30s, unshaven, wiry frame, with a forced authority in his voice. License and registration. I nodded, keeping my movement steady. Sure, officer. What's the issue? He hesitated. Just for a second. Routine stop, he said. Too fast. Too rehearsed. I acted like I believed him, like I wasn't analyzing every word, every movement. I reached for my wallet, my eyes flicking down to his belt. No radio. No visible firearm. Just a cheap leather belt with a flashlight clipped to it. Red flag number 3. I handed him my ID, watching carefully as he took it. His fingers twitched, his grip too tight like he was nervous. He didn't even glance at the name. He just held it awkwardly before handing it off to his partner, a taller guy who had barely spoken. That's when I saw his badge, if you could even call it that. Cheap. Thin. Looked like something you'd find at a flea market. No state. Seal. No department name, just a generic emblem slapped onto a flimsy wallet. Fake. All of it. My gut twisted, but I forced myself to stay calm. If these guys were faking it, they were up to something. And right now, they thought I was just an ordinary driver. That was my advantage. So I played along. I leaned back, keeping my voice casual. Everything okay, officer? The first guy shifted, glancing at his partner. That hesitation again. They weren't expecting questions. I almost smiled. They had no idea who they just pulled over. The fake cop held my ID like it was a foreign object, flipping it over once before handing it off to his partner. The taller guy, silent until now, took it with a glance, barely looking at my name before slipping it into his pocket. Red flag number 4. Real cops don't do that. They check it, run it, verify it. But these guys, they were stalling. Where? Are you headed tonight? The first one asked, leaning a little too close to my window. His breath carried a hint of stale cigarettes and bad decisions. I kept my expression neutral. Just heading home. You live around here? I frowned like I was just a confused, law-abiding citizen. Yeah, a few miles up. Is there a problem, officer? He took a second too long to answer. Routine check. There it was again, the same line. Like they'd rehearsed it. The taller guy finally spoke. You traveling alone? That one made my skin crawl. It wasn't a question a real cop would ask. Not like that. Not this soon. I shrugged. Yeah, just me. He nodded slowly, then took half a step back, like he was sizing up the situation. The first guy shifted on his feet, rubbing his thumb over the edge of his so-called badge like he was trying to convince himself it was real. I decided it was time to press them. I tilted, my head keeping my tone casual. "What department did you say you were with?" The first guy blinked. State Patrol." Too vague. No mention of a district, a county, nothing. He was making it up as he went. "Oh yeah?" I leaned on my armrest, feigning curiosity. "I know a few guys in State Patrol. Who's your precinct captain?" Silence. Just for a second, but long enough. Then he scoffed. "You ask a lot of questions." I smiled. "Just making conversation." His jaw tightened. The taller one gave him a subtle look like he was telling him to wrap this up. But I wasn't done playing yet. I took a slow breath, pretending to hesitate, like I was debating whether I should say anything at all. Then, with a carefully measured pause, I looked him dead in the eye and said it. "I'm the chief of police." Champfeur. Reaction was instant. The first guy's face drained of color. The taller one stiffened like he'd been hit with a taser. I let the words sink in, watching as realization crashed into them like a freight train. The first guy forced a laugh, but it came out shaky. "Yeah, right." I reached into my jacket, slow and deliberate, and pulled out my real badge. The actual one. The one that carried weight, authority, and all the power these guys only pretended to have. I held it up, letting them read the words for themselves. "Chief of Police." No one spoke. No one moved. Then, like a switch had been flipped, the taller guy took a step back. His hand twitched toward his pocket, toward his car, toward escape. That's when I knew. They were about to run. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I watched their faces, the exact moment they realized they had just pulled over the worst possible person. The first guy, the one who had been doing all the talking, let out a nervous chuckle. It was forced, high-pitched, like a bad poker player who just realized he bet everything on a losing hand. The taller one? He wasn't laughing. He was staring at my badge, his eyes flicking between it and me like he was trying to convince himself this was some kind of joke. It wasn't. I let the moment breathe, let the weight of my words sink in. Then, calmly, I tucked my badge away and folded my arms. "Let me see your IDs." Boom. Checkmate. The fake cop's chuckle died in his throat. For a second, they both just stood there, like two deer caught in headlights. Then the first guy cleared his throat, forcing another smile, like he thought he could still talk his way out of this. "Come on, man," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "No need for all that. Just a misunderstanding, right?" I didn't blink. "Your ID, the taller one." He was sweating now. His hand twitched at his side, his breathing a little faster than before. They weren't answering, because they didn't have an answer. The first guy ran a hand through his greasy hair and took half a step back. "Look, let's just—" I stepped out of the car. That shut him up. I wasn't just some random driver anymore. I was standing, present, in control. And they were trapped. The taller one shifted his weight, eyes darting toward their car. He was thinking about running. I could see it. Could practically hear the gears turning in his head. I took a slow step forward, my voice low but firm. "I asked you a question." He swallowed hard. "We left them in the car. A lie. A bad one." I nodded like I believed him. "Go ahead." "Then grab them." His jaw clenched. He knew what I was doing. If he went to the car and opened the door, he had two choices: produce an ID he didn't have, or make a run for it. And he knew I was ready for either. His partner, the loudmouth, shuffled his feet. "Listen, man, we don't need to—" I turned my head slightly, giving him a look. That was all it took. He shut up. The tension crackled like static electricity. A choice had to be made. And I knew exactly what was about to happen. I could hear it in their breathing now. Shallow, uneven, panicked. Their confidence had shattered the moment I stepped out of my car. The air between us was thick, charged with something unspoken. They knew. I knew. This was over, but they weren't ready to admit it yet. I reached into my jacket and slowly pulled out my badge, holding it up between us. The dim glow of the streetlights reflected off the metal, and I watched as their eyes locked onto it, as the reality of their situation sank in. "You're impersonating law enforcement." My voice was calm, steady, but there was no mistaking the weight behind it. That's a felony. The shorter guy, the one who had done all the talking, was unraveling fast. He forced a laugh, hands raising slightly like he was trying to ease the tension. Look, man, this is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what he was going with? I didn't react. Just let him stew in the silence. He swallowed hard, glancing at his partner, who was standing rigid, fists clenching and unclenching, at his sides. He hadn't said a word since I'd asked for their IDs. He was calculating, thinking. I shifted slightly, just enough to remind them I was still in control. A misunderstanding, huh? I echoed. You mean the fake uniforms? The fake badge? The fact that you pulled me over without cause? I tilted my head. Or the part where you never called this in? That hit. The taller one's eyes flicked toward their car, just for a second, but I caught it. No radio, no scanner. Nothing a real cop would have in their vehicle. And they knew I knew. The short one exhaled sharply, his forced bravado cracking. Okay, look, we didn't mean… I cut him off. You didn't mean to what? My voice was sharper now. Didn't mean to pull over the wrong person? Or didn't mean to get caught? His mouth opened, then closed. He had nothing. Because this wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. I saw the moment they realized there was no way out of this, one way or another. This was ending tonight. The question was, how far were they willing to go to escape? And I was about to find out. A heavy silence hung in the air. I could see it in their eyes now. They knew they were trapped. The fake badge, the lack of a radio, their panicked attempts to justify themselves. There was no talking their way out of this. That's when I saw it. A subtle shift. The taller one, the quiet one, moved just an inch. Not enough to draw immediate attention, but I caught it. His weight shifted to his back foot, angled slightly toward their car. He was getting ready. Didn't react, didn't move. Just watched. If he was going to run, I needed him to think he had a chance. I kept my voice level. Here's what's going to happen. His breathing quickened. I kept talking, buying time, keeping control. You're both going to stay right where you are. I nodded toward their car. Keys on the roof. Hands where I can see them. Nothing. The shorter one licked his lips, darting a glance at his partner. The tension in the air was suffocating now, coiled tight like a spring. I was ready. Then, he bolted. The taller one spun and sprinted toward their car, gravel kicking up as his shoes scraped against the pavement. I was already moving. My hand went to my radio as I took a step forward. Dispatch, I have 2 suspects attempting to flee. Need backup now. The shorter one hesitated, caught between following his partner and staying frozen. His survival instincts kicked in a second too late. I lunged. My hand clamped onto his wrist, yanking him back just as he tried to turn. He fought, twisting, desperate. Don't do it, I barked. But the other guy. He was almost at the car. His hand reached for the door handle. I had to act now. The roar of approaching sirens filled the night air. Backup had arrived. The tall guy, the runner, had made it to the car, but it didn't matter anymore. Red and blue lights cut through the darkness as 3 patrol units skidded to a stop, boxing them in. Nowhere left to go. He froze, hand still on the door handle, his body rigid. His partner, the one I had grabbed, went limp in my grip, all the fight draining out of him. Hands up! Now! My officers poured out of their cruisers, weapons drawn, voices sharp and commanding. The power had shifted completely. The taller one turned slowly, his arms raising in surrender, his face twisting with frustration. This wasn't how they thought their night would end. I stepped forward, keeping my voice firm but calm. It's over, and they knew it. They dropped to their knees as my officers moved in, securing their wrists in cuffs. The shorter one, talker, tried one last time. This is all a mistake, man. We were just messing around. His voice cracked, pure desperation. I shook my head. Not according to your records, because now we knew exactly who they were. Career criminals, fraud, theft, impersonation. This wasn't their first time pretending to be cops, but it was the first time they got caught by the wrong person. I stood there, watching as they were hauled to their feet, their fake authority stripped away in an instant. And I couldn't help but think, what if I hadn't known the signs? What if I had been someone else? What would they have done? I pushed the thought away. Tonight, justice had been served. But next time? Someone else might not be so lucky. The night was quiet again. The fake cops were gone, hauled off in the back of real squad cars, their cheap badges and knockoff uniforms now nothing more than evidence, but I couldn't shake the thought of what might have happened if I hadn't been the one they pulled over. How many others had fallen for their act? It's easy to assume we'd all recognize a fraud when we see one. But the truth? Most people won't question authority, flash some lights, wear the right outfit, speak with confidence, and people comply. It's human nature. And that's what these guys were counting on. I glanced at my side mirror, the reflection of red and blue lights still faint in the distance. How many innocent drivers had been fooled, intimidated, robbed? Worse, tonight they got caught. But what about the ones who haven't? I turned toward the camera, my voice steady but serious. If you ever get pulled over and something feels off, trust your gut. A real cop won't get angry if you verify their identity. A fake one will. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the night settle. Trust your instincts. Sometimes, they don't just protect you, they save you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. Your support means the world